what are the 1 to 2 leadership principles that you have discovered and executed that have contributed to your success?
So I thought about this a lot when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and for me, I'm not I don't read a lot of books. I don't attend a lot of management sessions. I think that it's a lot about what was said about Mr. Kirk over there. I think a lot of leadership is driven from passion. I have a lot of passion about my business. I think passion, drive are 2 critical points of leadership. And look, we all have leaders within our organization. They lead by example. How do you promote that? So the other thing we try to do is communicate. We try to overly communicate to the staff. We want everybody to be on the same page. So no matter what the position is within the company, we want everybody to understand what our goals are. We want to recognize people. We want to empower people. And then we want to review that. So we review it quarterly as an organization, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and nobody's blindsided by anything.
So I go through, I call it the leadership triangle. So I just did my inaugural Texas tour, visiting all my newly acquired offices. And one of the things that I stood up in front of all of those individuals and explained was, to me, our business is very focused on the triangle portion of leadership. There's 3 parties that are involved in any decision that you make. There's the customer, there's the business, and there's our employees. So, and when you think about problem solving, I want to work through, look, let's take your idea and say, does it check the box for all 3 of those issues? Do we do the best thing for the customer? Do we do the best thing for the business? And do we do the best thing for our team or for our employee? And if you can check all 3 boxes, your solution is probably spot on. And if you can't check all 3 boxes, let's talk through ways that we could get to checking all 3 boxes. A lot of the 10 questions that John mentioned earlier, that is very effective. When you sit down with someone and you take the time and they don't know anything really about you, it really helps you get to know them, and it helps you understand, it helps them believe in the passion, and they see the passion that you have for the business. And so the 10 questions is really, really important.
I think one of the most important leadership principles is understanding what your individual strengths are. The way that I like to define them as your superpowers. What are the things that you are really good at that you just assume everyone else is good at? The things that you do and it gives you energy. It just naturally feels good to do. It feels energizing.
How do you differentiate between management and leadership?
This is such an important differentiation. So we spend a lot of time in our company talking about this. There is a significant difference between management and leadership, and I think when you boil it down to the absolute basics, you manage things and you lead people. And so when you look at management, you manage tasks, you manage processes, you manage overtime, you manage projects. Those are the things that you manage. And with people, you're guiding, you're being visionary, you're thinking about the big picture. You know, when we talk about management, we think you're working inside of the business. When you're talking leadership, you're working on the business. So it's that bigger, broader picture. I think it's Jim Collins who says, the moment that you feel that you need to manage someone, you've made a hiring error. And so we don't want to have to manage our people. We want to lead our people. And if you have to manage your people, then they're probably the wrong people.
Managers have a more sense of they want to control everything and control the individuals that are contributors, and leaders are empowering them to do those things.
So just a quick little story about a growth opportunity for me that I experienced about 7 years ago. I'd been working for Epson for about 15 years, had been very successful. I managed North America for the channel. Very successful. We made our numbers, we made our quotas. I was like, all good. Got a new manager, and about 6 months into it, he said, there's nobody that does your job better than you. He goes, you have been very successful. You've made your quotas. Your people are successful. He said, but you do too much. You do too much for your people. He said, I'm going to teach you how to be a leader, not a manager. He said, I'm going to teach you how to lead your people and make sure that they understand the goals for the company and what we are all going forward to do. He said, your job will change overnight. He said, you need to build your successor. You need to teach them how to do what you do. You don't need to do it all for them. So within about 3 days, boom, my life changed. I had a lot more time to think out of the box because I wasn't doing. I was standing back and thinking, and what we as a team needed to do better. So anyway, so that was my growth experience about 7 years ago, which goes totally parallel with what all y'all just said. What are the keys to developing the next generation of leaders in your business? What are you looking for as you develop leaders in your organization?
You know, gosh, it's an interesting question because then it means that maybe I get to retire one day, which is really awesome, right? I will say that, you know, I think that every leader is unique. There is a commonality, I believe, when you find successful leaders. It's passion, right? The passion piece is really important, but just because you have passion doesn't mean that you're going to be an effective leader. I have found through my experiences that if you have the ability to be almost like a chameleon, where you can adapt to the environment that you're in quickly, and it allows you to kind of get one time a leader once told me that if your gut tells you it's wrong, it's probably wrong. And sure enough, throughout my years in performing this work just in the Dallas market, I would go back to that individual that said that, and I think, man, he was pretty right.
I think one of the most important things, I agree with everything that Jennifer said, but kind of taking it back one step, the very first thing that you need to look at if you're trying to grow a leader or bring a leader in from the outside into your organization, do they fit into the culture of your company? And if they don't, I don't care what attributes they have, they're not going to be successful. Your people aren't going to be happy, they're not going to be successful, it's just not going to work. Trust me, I've experienced it a few times actually. But then the next thing, you know, we always try to grow people from within, especially for our leadership positions, whenever we possibly can. It doesn't always work out, but whenever we can, we want to promote from within because we know those people. We know if they're a fit for the culture or not. And so one of the things that we always look for is, do they have that growth mindset? Are they looking to grow? Are they looking to develop? Because if they don't want this, if they don't want to be a leader, to your point about sales, there's a lot of salespeople, and everyone falls victim to this at some point. You make your best salesperson the sales manager, and then you lose all the sales, and they're not happy with what they're doing. You know, if you do that, no one's happy.
We created some core values about 4 or 5 years ago, and everything we do in our organizations are based around those core values. So in terms of creating a good culture, I couldn't agree with that more. There's some great people out there. There's a lot of people in the audience. I'm sure half of you would hate working with me, and the other half, we might work well together. It's got to be the right fit for the right organization. So we all we want to make sure that our staff is aligned with what our goals are and what our core values are, and that helps, generate some leadership out of those values.
So as leaders in your respective organizations, what are the questions you're asking yourself today?
I'm asking myself how I can clone myself, and I haven't gotten any good answers on that. The question I'm asking myself is, we all work really hard, and I know I'm with NCR, but all of the individuals that own your own business, you work all the time, and I work a lot all the time as well. But when you're you're working all the time, you're always on call, you're it. And so what I'm trying to understand is, how can I work smarter? I'm going to continue to work hard. That's kind of not the question. It's how can I work smarter and expand my reach and really work on, I feel like we have created a very, very great culture in the Dallas market, and I need to understand how can I speed that up into the other markets. And they have very different cultures in those offices because they had very different leaders in the office. As
a reseller, diversifying is always top of mind. We talked about it 2 years ago in Hawaii. I think that was a big topic of conversation. I can't worry too much about what I can't control, and I cannot control acquisitions and mergers, and I can't control that. But what I can control is aligning ourselves with vendors that allow us to meet our goals. So diversifying, it never stops either, because every year something changes. So I think that's been the big difference for a lot of us that are resellers.
One of the questions that I ask is, is this my best yes? Is this a good idea for me to say yes to this or not? I heard a quote a few years ago, and I have lived by this, and I ask myself this whenever I'm looking to say yes or no to something, and we all do this as leaders. There's numerous opportunities we have to say yes to things, to take on more responsibilities, to take on new products or services or offerings or whatever that might be. So is this your best yes? And the quote that I had heard is that there are other people that can do this. You're not the only one that can do this. So basically, get over yourself. You're not that great, right? There's other people that are capable to do it maybe even better than you might be able to do it. And so, is this my best? Yes. Get over myself. I'm not the best one that could do these things that people might be asking you to do. So what's coming, and how can I prepare for it? From an HR world, we're looking at, there's a labor shortage. Very difficult to find people, qualified people, to keep people. So how can we prepare for some of these challenges? If we don't have people, if we can't keep our people, if we can't find people, it's very difficult to run our businesses. So those are some of the things that I'm asking of how can we internally prepare for some of that, create that engagement, keep that culture going so that we keep our people. And there's a couple examples of things that we're looking into the future on.
We see leadership at all different levels in an organization. During your career, who's been the most impactful mentor for you? And what lessons have you learned?
I think it's important to realize that your mentor doesn't have to be a person. You can find mentorship through books, through podcasts, through YouTube, through all of these different channels. And that's how I have continued to build. I'm one of my, you do the strength finders. One of my second strength is learner. I love to learn and grow and develop new things. And so listening to podcasts, listening to audible books, learning as much as I can. You can find mentorships through that. If you're looking for leadership growth, if you're looking for business opportunities, if you want to listen to entrepreneurs and how they're doing things, you can find all of that within podcasts. And so that's free. You can do it anytime that's convenient for you. So I would highly encourage everyone to do that. The second one is a little different. That actually was my manager for about 8-9 years. And we are very, very different people. We could not be any more different. But sometimes those are the best mentors because they make you think differently about things. They challenge you in ways that you would never challenge yourself. They frustrate you often. And those are the situations where you're going to learn the most from, those frustrating situations where on the surface you get upset or angry or annoyed or whatever it might be. Then you kind of reflect on it and you think, you know what, they actually have a very good point. I should really think about that a little further. So not only having mentors that can help support and guide you, but also challenge you as well.
For me, it might not be one individual. I feel like I've taken really great qualities from a lot of wonderful leaders and kind of created my own leadership style. So there's also some things that I learned that might not be my style, but could have been effective for another leader. That is not wrong. It just wasn't for me, and I didn't maybe respond to it that same way. Mentorship to me is almost like your guide. So if you're going to go on a big hike, you need someone to kind of show you the way. But while you're on the hike, you don't want to miss all the beautiful things on the hike. So the guide is just there for you when you need them, right? I wouldn't want to lean on a mentor to do my job, but they're really a guide for me to make sure that I'm really taking all things into consideration and making the best call for the team that I lead, the business that I'm responsible for, and the customers that look to us for guidance. So
I talked about growth mindset a couple times, and the opposite side of that is a fixed mindset. And so when you look, and they specifically look at failure within those two models. And so a fixed mindset is that failure is not an option, failure is failure. And when you have a growth mindset, failure means growth. You learn from that opportunity and move forward, like Jennifer was just saying. And so there's a book by Carol Dweck, something like that. Dweck, thank you. And she goes into that in depth, and it's a great book and talks about the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset. And it starts with leadership, right? If leaders are okay with failing, then their people are going to be okay with failing. If we're not okay with failure and we don't react well to that, then how do you think it's just like your kids, right? They're watching everything you do. And so the more that we can work on that, I think the That's where it needs to start.
Thank you, panel, for
Thank you.